So, in the very beginning, I wanted to make sure that Charity felt a part of the lesson, so I had her introduce herself in the very beginning. Of course, Brother Wilson knows who this is, it's his own daughter, but I wanted to make sure that she felt a part of it so that she felt that she was contributing and being a part of this lesson more fully than just a student learning. I also wanted to give her a copy of the recipe so that she'd be able to make it on her own someday, make it at home, have the exact recipe for herself. And so right there, so then we'd have her goal of what we were trying to do right in front of her, written in front of her, so to make it visually, I guess, stimulating for her. I wanted to make sure that she knew that with this recipe that it would be different from other recipes and that it would include vanilla pudding mix, and to let her know the difference between other cookie recipes, like how this you don't need to soften to butter. I could tell from the very beginning that she knew how to bake cookies. It wasn't until later in the lesson that she actually told me that she made cookies a lot of times on her own. So, but I could tell instantly because the way that she read the recipe, she knew exactly the cups, and here with the butter, like, she had a good idea of how that worked as well. So I could tell right away that her ability to understand, her cognitive ability to understand things was a lot higher than I expected. But I still knew that I could teach her a couple things. So I continued on with the lesson, just kind of giving her a little more leeway. There were at some points in the very beginning where I felt like I was over scaffolding just a little bit, but so I tried to give her some more reins so that she could have more control in the lesson, but also to have scaffolding, at least the bare minimum, so that then there'd be like an organization to the lesson. And continuing on with the lesson. This was another point of the lesson where I could tell that she already knew what she was doing. That I guess you could say that she was far more advanced than I had given her credit. Like, I knew that this lesson wouldn't be hard for her, but I was hoping that I was hoping that it would be of a challenge. But I'm glad that it wasn't, because then it kind of would have been a failure in the end, because this was a lesson of learning a new way of baking cookies. And so here I'm just telling her the other options of sugar, that you don't want to have powdered sugar for baking cookies because it's the wrong kind of sugar and the cookies actually end up different. So, and she knew what a quarter cup was. The markings aren't on the cup, but that was okay because she knew the smallest cup is the quarter cup. So, continuing on. So continuing on with the recipe. She knows how to read a recipe, so at this point I had actually forgotten the very first step of all baking, that you have to preheat the oven. And I preheat the oven for her simply because this was a different kind of oven, and it took me a few minutes to figure it out before she had arrived. And so I probably should have let her do it, just so she would have been able to figure it out. And I'm just going to say it now, her pre-assessment is actually the seasoning bottles that we can see down in the middle. I wanted to leave that for later in the lesson, so as to get like the before and after of understanding the before of seeing of how she works without me seeing the pre-assessment, and then afterwards having done the pre-assessment and seeing what different ways that she can be taught. So here I'm just showing her like a nice easy way to scoop out brown sugar. It's not too hard of a trick, it's just a lot cleaner way. So I scaffolded it for her, gave her a prototype and example, and then she did the rest. I'm kind of hoping that with having the recipe written down, that she'll be able to apply Bloom's taxonomy to it, that there will be the memorization and the understanding of the recipe, which is the big reason for this lesson, is for the understanding of it and then the application. The knowledge will be when we read it, but memorization will come at a different point in time. So I'm hoping that at some point, like, she'll be able to take this recipe and be able to apply Bloom's taxonomy. So that was pretty much my biggest goal right there, was for this to become a natural recipe for her. Kind of mad with what's happening right now. Another point in the lesson where I saw that she's very capable of baking cookies. I can't remember at which point, but at one point during the lesson, I believe it was during the pre-assessment, which would actually not be a pre-assessment because it wasn't pre for the lesson. But anyway, it was during the pre-assessment that she told me that she actually makes dinner when her mom is at work, or if she needs to make dinner, she makes dinner for her mom. And so having learned that, it gave me the knowledge that she was much more capable than I had learned from my questions of Brother Wilson about her and from the stories that he had told. So I had to change things a little bit after that. Let's see. Make sure they had to wash out the teaspoon, so you don't want to get vanilla into the baking soda. So this is the part where I'm telling her, like, the difference between all the cookie recipes that she knows and the cookie recipe that I'm showing her, that I'm teaching her right now. And that the biggest difference is that the pudding added to it makes the cookies softer and last longer with their softness. And I'm wanting her to understand, like, why that is exactly. That certain ingredients do certain things. That flour gives the density to the cookies. Eggs make them rise. And what pudding is going to do is to make them soft. I want to make sure that she understands this. Putting the pudding mix inside. And making sure that she takes responsibility for the things that she uses, that she always makes sure to throw away things and keep things organized, that as soon as she uses them, she puts them to the side, to show that, just to show that she's done with them, to give organization to the baking method. So here's another point of the lesson where I made sure that she understood that there's a difference between all-purpose flour and other flours. and that she would want to make sure to have all-purpose flour. So I wanted her to understand that with baking, like it's an exact chemistry, math of types, that you need to do certain things a certain way or else it won't end up quite right. And I could tell that she already understood that from a previous experience with baking. I wanted to make sure that that it was kind of like solidified for her in this. So in this, I made sure that she did all of the scooping and measuring, because I could, like I said, I could tell that she was very experienced in baking and that this was nothing new to her. And then I was just double checking for her, making sure that everything was okay. And making sure to check the recipe. Double check that we put in the right amount of flour. Then again, making sure that everything was put to the side. The actual putting in of the ingredients was more of showing like cognitive ability to show and to see where exactly she was in her understanding of things. Oh, I remember this part. We had a hard time getting it out. We chose too large of a spoon to measure. But anyway, so during the actual like putting in of the ingredients, I wanted to make sure that cognitive ability, the pre-operational of Piaget, that she was able to see the things that we were putting in and to understand how it would affect the results of why, when we would get the cookie, why it was, what had made it rise, the eggs, what gave it that the thickness and yet made it soft, the flour and the pudding mix. So I want to make sure that you understood that. So I couldn't really go into anything socially or morally during this time until the actual baking of the cookies. So now we're about to put in the chocolate chips, and this was bad on my part. I forgot to bring scissors. And I know it's a very terrible example for an 11-year-old girl, but just showed her a shortcut that you can open back with them. And of course, to remember clean up after each step makes things easier in the end. This one was hard. That one would not break off. And with the chocolate, another thing I wanted to make sure was that she knew that with the chocolate there wasn't an exact measurement with it. That with, I guess, the flavoring of cookies, you don't have to be exact with that kind of stuff. That is more personal. You have power over that, control over that, and that she can do whatever she personally wants. Showing that there are some things that need to be done in an exact way, that there are laws to society, but that there are some things that we can control, and include the chocolate chips. Okay, so this part was seriously embarrassing. I should have checked the KitchenAid previous to her arrival. Make sure that the outlet was actually working. But I mean, it was a quick fix. I just went to another outlet. Thankfully there were plenty in that kitchen. And it was actually better that way because then we could have the bowl right next to the cooking pans, baking pans. This was part of the lesson where I wanted to bring heuristics into it. And you can't see it, but the bowl is mixing the dough at this point. And I wanted to make sure, like, two biggest things of the actual recipe that I wanted to point out to her as two of the most important things was, one, how the pudding would affect the cookies, and then two, to help her grow in her ability of heuristics to understand things simply by habit or patterns, and in this case being able to feel the texture of the cookie dough and know whether it's okay or not, whether it's ready to be put on the pan. So should still be mixing at this point. It's at this point that I got a little more personal with the conversation. Well, she's looking at the dough now, but after having put in all the ingredients, I wanted to get more on the social and moral part of the lesson. This should be where we're going to be feeling the cookie dough, testing out her ability of heuristics and understanding. I couldn't believe she didn't want to lick the mixer. She was very professional during this lesson, and it was very impressive. I could tell that she was going to be advanced on every level. Kohlberg, Erickson, Piaget, that she was going to be advanced on all of it. So this is where we're testing out the dough, where we wanted it to be, we didn't want it to be sticky. We didn't want to have a whole bunch of cookie dough left in our hands after we rolled it. We wanted it to roll smoothly between our hands. And she kind of already knew this. So we're good to go. This is the part of the lesson that I realized that with the baking increments of 10 minutes that we'd have a lot of spare time. So that was one reason why I wanted to have the pre-assessment during one of the baking segments, but also, of course, to, what am I trying to say? Oh, like I always said, to figure out what kind of learning differences. So, like I said, I wanted to get to know her on a more personal note, to have this lesson be more of two women making cookies. I didn't want to be, I didn't want to be like two friends or a teacher and a student, but kind of like a middle of that, because I wasn't going for teaching her math or English or history or anything like that. I wanted to teach her some responsibilities of society, of how having a talent, a skill like this can help a young woman in helping others and helping her community, the church, young women activities. She'll be able to bring these cookies as a treat to help others. I've made these cookies several times when my husband has had a bad day, so this would be a good recipe for her to make. In helping others, so morally she'd be able to take these cookies and almost have a reward because it would be like almost like a pride in oneself of accomplishment, and but also in, I believe, conventional level, she'd be able to help her community, to help teachers, parents. So I wanted to show her that, and I could tell that she was pretty much already at that level. She was talking about her siblings at this point, becoming much more comfortable, and so in goes the first batch. Had her double check. And she misread the recipe. She said that they cooked for 4 to 5 minutes, but she read the wrong line, so I used information language and suggested that she look at it again. So at this point we were both trying to figure out the timer. So that was definitely learning right there. So we'll be starting my pre-assessment here soon, or midway assessment, I guess you would call it. So with my assessment, I wanted to see her ability to connect seasonings with meats or dishes, main dishes, and so with this, I wanted to see her ability to connect different things. I believe, I can't remember what it's called, but it's in the Piaget pre-operational reversibility, I believe, where she takes what she begins with and is able to see like the results. So I wanted to test out, this is also a test of her heuristics, to test her her senses, her sensory motor skills. And so to take the seasoning and mash it up with the dish, I believe that's oregano. So I had some dishes like add chicken, beef, fish, pasta, and pizza. So I wanted to be all dishes that she'd be familiar with, and seasonings that most she'd be familiar with, but some, like I think one of them was coriander, and one that like the seasonings that she would have to base all on smell. She was able to taste them if she wanted to, but I think she did all of them by smell. And with this, I wanted to show her once again that the difference between baking and cooking, that in baking it's an exact science, except of course for the chocolate chips. But with cooking, you can simply like cook up a piece of chicken and go with what kind of seasonings taste or smell right to you. So it's all about what you think with cooking. And I wanted her to see that with cooking, that it's less pressure, that you have more power when you're cooking. Not exactly a will to power, because with girls it's more nurturing with will to powers, but that she had more choice in the matter. I'm going to go back and check those cookies. And I just remembered this, but throughout most of the lesson, she seemed very distracted. and I could tell because she kept looking at something behind us, and there wasn't a clock behind us, and I feel like she was looking at the clock at the computer, the laptop, but I couldn't quite tell what it was, and so I could tell that she was very distracted, and so I tried to focus her on the lesson by asking her questions like what step was next or something like that, but I could tell that it was almost like she just couldn't focus. And I also know that she had to go to her gymnastic lesson, and I believe at this point she was late. So, knowing from what I've learned from her dad and from what I gathered in this short lesson, that she's very dedicated, she's very committed to the things that she does, and that she wants to do things correctly. And so I think the fact that she was going to be late for her lesson really distracted her. And also, even though she said that she had been doing it for years, I believe the videotape, the fact that she was being recorded, also was very distracting for her. And because she was distracted, I was trying to make her focus, but that wasn't quite working. She was focused, but she seemed almost uncomfortable. So that was when I took the initiative to make sure that she had situational interest, that she felt comfortable during this part, by asking her about school, about her siblings, and making sure that she not only felt comfortable, but that she felt that she was learning something. Because she said that she had had a baking lesson before, and like I've said previously, that it was obvious that she had cooked and baked before. So I wanted to make sure that she learned something in other areas besides baking, such as the socially and morally. Yeah. I'm gonna go wash our hands again. I want to make sure that washing our hands is very important to show her that clean hands is a good thing. Even when you're baking your own cookies, clean hands are a very good thing. Okay. Another thing that I was unprepared for, I totally forgot a hot pad. That's probably one of the most important things you can have while baking, so we set out on a search for a hot pad. We found a towel, so that was good. That'll work. Again, I could tell she was becoming distracted. Not distracted, but that we were getting to the point of the lesson where there wasn't much left but waiting. So I wanted to delve deeper into social and moral, and get to know her a little bit better, to make her more comfortable during this time. it was really interesting to me that once once we finished with the actual making of the cookies and we was waiting for the baking, she opened up quite a bit more, and like she told me that her sister Alyssa, I believe it was, eats the cookie dough all the time whenever they make cookies. So excited for the next batch in. Okay, so the 10 minutes ended, and we would take the first batch out, and I wanted to test out her heuristics again, to touch the cookies and to feel if they were too soft or if they were just right. Just right to be pulled out. So I'd put those to the side so they cool off, and then the second batch. Set the timer again, 10 minutes. At the time, I didn't have any plastic bags, so I got some aluminum foil to wrap up her cookies with. So as soon as they would cool off, we'd be able to take them off the pan and put them in the tin foil, and she would take them home to her family. I want her to double check how long the cookies should cool. I ended up with the instruction part of the recipe, ingredients being more of pre-operational for her, and so they look at the camera. And then for the actual baking part, for socially and morally. And it was at this point of the lesson, though, with her becoming distracted and not quite uncomfortable, but I figured that I should actually turn the camera off, and because I wanted to see how she would act differently. And I just want to say she was much more comfortable with the camera off, even though she's been doing these lessons for years, she says. And she was much more comfortable, and we laughed a lot, and it seemed that without that pressure of the camera anymore, that she was much more open and just enjoy the lesson more thoroughly. So, and also we had another about 20 minutes left until the cookies would all be done. So I felt that with the camera turned off and that less pressure, that we would both be able to be more comfortable with the lesson.